Hello and welcome to the Edge Sports Podcast, our Week 17 recap. We're available on the Edge Sports Podcast Network on your podcast platform of choice, as well as our Edge Sports YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to our show on any of those podcast platforms, as well as that YouTube channel, and give us a 5-star review. Help us grow our audience a little bit. Don't forget we have our coach rankings that I will be doing with our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George, on Wednesdays. We will have one coming up this Wednesday. We'll be continuing those throughout the playoffs as well. Looking forward to each weekend of playoff action and comparing those coaches that are still left. Scott, thank you for joining me. Happy New Year. Hard to believe there's only 1 week left in the regular season.
Yeah, crazy. Happy New Year, Ian. Thanks for welcoming me. Yeah, I had a nice long weekend. Hope you did as well. Got to catch some of the football, and it's crazy. We're in week 17. In years past, this would be it. But we actually, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but have a bonus week to look forward to. And this week really delivered some interesting games, and definitely excited to get into it.
Yeah, still a lot of action left. I think only Green Bay has only the NFC 1 seed is locked up. Still some positioning to play for there, as well as in the AFC, who the Titans now are the number 1 team in the AFC heading into the last week. They have a date with, I believe, the Texans. So as long as they win, they will hold on to that 1 seed. And with all the injuries they have over the season, that is very impressive. I know a lot of people calling for Mike Vrabel actually to be coach of the year with the, I think, record amount of players they've played with, but should be an exciting last week and can't wait to see what happens this weekend. But before then, you said not to get too far ahead of ourselves. We'll start with this weekend's action, and there was a ton of it. A lot of good stuff going on. First, we'll start with the biggest game of the week, the one everyone's talking about, Kansas City and Cincinnati. One of the most exciting games of the year. Started off with the Bengals being down, I think 14-0 early, and they came roaring back. 2 huge performances from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who had 11 catches, was it 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. Pretty crazy. And Zach Taylor, Bengals, who ranked 17th in our coach rankings overall, had an interesting day play calling. Made potential history here for us at Edge Sports. We'll start with, though, he had a really good call. It was our 5th best go of the week. And as we saw, you'll see some of these. Scott, our best call this week or our 5th best call this week here is at 5.7% increase. A lot of weeks, that's our number 1 or number 2. But over the last few weeks in the season, we've been seeing a lot of really good decisions on 4th down. So our top decisions have been a lot higher and not as many big errors. We've got a big one of both, but that number 5 was Zach Taylor's decision early on in the, or about halfway through the 3rd quarter. It was a 4th and 1 at his own 45, down by 4, chose to go for it. Really wasn't surprised to see that from Zach Taylor. Kind of expected that coming in, that he was going to be aggressive going against the Chiefs like a lot of teams do. And he converted this. So this was a big play in this one.
Yeah, and how many times have we talked about it in the past where when you look across the field at Patrick Mahomes or players of his ilk, Aaron Rodgers, offenses of that stature, it's always going to be wind at the back for going for it. And this was definitely the right move, especially when you're trailing already, half the game's already over. So just, so many things here that I think really complement this decision and really make it the right one. It is interesting, as we are now in week 17, just to see how many times across the league we're really seeing coaches find the right play call this season. It's good, really good to see. And this one was a slam dunk. Cincinnati's on their own 45. So, we're in that kind of middle section of the field, 4th and 1. Your offense has been performing pretty strongly this season, and especially in this game. So, super high conversion rates on 4th and 1, as we always talk about. And when you got Jamar Chase on your side, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow throwing him the ball, you got to feel good about keeping the offense out there. And Zach Taylor did the right thing. And I think this was definitely one step of several that contributed to their winning this game. And definitely a big pickup for them.
Yeah, sign of things to come in this one. A little bit of foreshadowing there. This drive ultimately ended in a punt. The Bengals would end up taking the lead on the next possession. Chiefs would respond with a field goal to tie it. And then a couple huge plays. We both mentioned Jamar Chase. Our 5th most impactful play was 3rd and 27 for the Bengals. 3:19 left in the game. They're tied at 31 at this point. And Joe Burrow throws one up to Jamar Chase on the right sideline. Makes an amazing catch, a 30-yard gain for the first down. It was a 24.1% increase in win probability. Again, number 5 on the week. And this basically, kept that drive alive. It ended up being the game's final drive, as we saw some craziness there at the end down the goal line. Set the Bengals up to score. And Zach Taylor this week, actually, the largest error of the week belongs to Zach Taylor. And a surprise to all of those out there who think analytics always says to go for it. It was the 4th and 1 where he chose to go for it. On the Kansas City one, 4th and goal, 57 seconds left. We actually liked the field goal. It was an 8.7% decrease in pre-snap win probability by going for it. So very surprising. It was not really surprising to me. Actually, when I was running this, wasn't sure which way it was going to go. Tony Romo on the broadcast was even kind of like, oh my God, I'm torn. I don't know what to do. He's like, you could go for it and make them score a touchdown, kick the field goal, and leave, almost a minute. At that point, it had been 54, 55 seconds left for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, even with no timeouts. But we like the field goal in this situation. It's been the topic of discussion really around the NFL since it happened yesterday, all over TV this morning. And even within our offices here, Scott, you and I just spent about 15 minutes talking through this one. So you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah. I would just add, I think among stat heads, analytics minded people, this is definitely a very interesting debate to be had. For the rest of the NFL fan base, maybe not even the most talked about thing in light of what happened in New York between Tampa Bay and New York within the whole Antonio Brown situation. But we'll leave that. I think we'll leave that to, I would say, cooler heads, but no,
can't really put any numbers to that one.
yeah, to the impassioned hot takers out there. But yeah, so this decision, super interesting one, very, very interesting one. I think, frame it. There's around a minute left in this game. It's tied, and Cincinnati has the ball, 4th and goal from the 1 yard line.
And this is the first 4th and goal they had, just to clarify.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's some subsequent penalties that drew some more time off the clock. But yeah, we're just focusing on the very first attempt at it, and super, super interesting. So I think like the conventional, well, maybe not conventional, but the sort of idea that folks have in their mind about what analytics is, it's go for it. Just about irrespective of any of the kind of situational factors at play, like it's always the right thing to do to go for it. This is obviously not true. It's certainly not the case. And here, you have like a lot of things in this decision that sort of set up conventionally in support of going for it. Obviously, 4th and 1 from the 1 is the big component here, right? But that would be a mistake to just assume that, there's these conventional factors that work in, the favor of going for it. The big thing that trumps all of, the yard line and, the score and that sort of thing is, well, the score matters, but the time remaining, right? So with 57 seconds left, you really have to think about not maximizing points, even though that typically is the way you want to operate, is just, hey, like do the thing that always maximizes my points. When there's 57 seconds left, it's not about maximizing your points. It's about the percentage of the time you wind up with more points than the other team, right? Sounds really stupid and simple, but that is the name of the game. And by kicking a field goal here, you do that. And I know that's surprising, but there's just so little time left, and your opponent doesn't have any timeouts. So their ability to move down the field quickly is really hampered. And so,
and another thing on this, Scott, just quickly want to make note that I like to try and do is when they go for it, they don't lose the game. Another thing we always want to try and like make that a point. They still win almost 73% of the time by going for it, 81% of the time by kicking a field goal.
Right, exactly. And so, it's just very easy to kind of like lose sight of that. And a lot of the benefits, the pros and the cons are not irrespective of the time on the clock, right? We talk about, there's benefit usually to backing up your opponent on their 1 yard line. Well, you realize a whole lot less value from that when there's no, subsequent possessions that you benefit from field position and that sort of thing. So our model's really able to, simulate down all of like kind of the finer points of this decision. And, it wasn't obvious enough, or it wasn't obvious ahead of time what the model would say, but when sort of the results fell out that kicking the field goal here was best, we dug into it, and I think it's really reasonable and really makes a lot of sense. So, when the Bengals go for it here, maybe they're slightly better than a 50% prospect to go ahead and score. And basically, when they score a touchdown here, the game's over. It's close to over. It's not 100% lock, but maybe Kansas City is a few single digit percent to win from that point. When obviously they go for it and fail, game remains tied. Kansas City takes over on the 1, and there's just they'll definitely realize some equity on that drive, but like overwhelmingly this game gets to overtime because they have to go down like 60-ish yards to get a reasonable field goal, and doing that in like when it eventually wound up being 40 seconds, but say like 50 seconds, something like that. There's just really not a lot of time to do so. And obviously teams have done this in the past. I'm not saying it's an impossible thing, but it still remains a very unlikely thing when you have no timeouts to go that far, that quickly, and set up the field goal. So, the overwhelmingly the best option turns out to be field goal because you're a near lock to convert it. NFL kickers convert this thing very close to 100% of the time, high 90%. And if we just sort of naively assume, which is not that far from the truth, Kansas City gets the ball 1st and 10 from their own 25 with about 40 seconds to work, they are going to be able to get in to get into field goal range a very like healthy amount of the time. Maybe it's something like 30 to 40%, somewhere in that range. And so, I mean, make no mistake, like that definitely happens a good amount of the time, but it's not like you're all of a sudden, like a dog to win the game if you're the Bengals, right? Like you're still going to be able to hold on most of the time, a good chunk of the time. I think oftentimes folks really don't like, losing. No one likes losing, but losing in sort of this sensational way, right? Where like Patrick Mahomes, he burned ya, or somebody like Aaron Rodgers burned ya. Like you have to respect that for sure. Those guys are really good, but I mean, they're not complete miracle workers. Like, and so it's just all a matter of putting that in context. Like they're still going to beat you, maybe 1 in 3 times and get down there and kick the field goal, send it to overtime, and where they're, slight favorites. But it's not, it's not what you think it is. It's not like you have to win it here and now, put everything on your own team. And so I think, because the field goal can put you ahead and do so in pretty much a guaranteed way, it winds up being the right move here. And that's what our model says. So, definitely, an interesting point of comparison between us and others and their recommendations. And I think it's definitely an interesting decision, and hopefully, there's some good discussion ahead this week around it. I think it was a lot of fun to analyze.
Yeah, and one thing that ended up happening, there was a couple penalties, and then on the subsequent 4th down, where they, it was a retry basically. There was another penalty that gave them a 1st down, able to kneel out the clock, kick a field goal with just a few seconds left, a walk-off field goal there. But that is something also to let you all know that we do account for. There are kind of distributions for penalties. A penalty in this situation on a goal to go, while you see him, it happened for the Bills yesterday against the Falcons, I believe, or maybe the other way around, or maybe they both had one. It's not super common that happens. You might think it is because you notice it when it happens, but it is very uncommon. But that is something we take into account, and that's exactly what happened in this one. So the Bengals were able to benefit from a penalty and come away with the win there. So that by far the biggest game yesterday, or at least most exciting game. Another big game to set up the playoffs was Philadelphia and Washington. So a win for Philly would get them one step closer. That's exactly what Philadelphia did, was win. And then with Green Bay's win over Minnesota, Philadelphia did clinch a playoff berth there. So Nick Sirianni, too, was a big reason that they were able to win this game. Overall, really good. He's 7th in our latest coach rankings. He was aggressive in this one, had a handful of bad fourth down calls, actually, but ended up being good overall. So he had our 5th worst call of the week. Late in the second quarter, just for the 2-minute warning, 4th and 4 on the Washington 45, decided to punt while down 13-7. You know, 4th and medium and plus territory is a questionable one there. It was a 4% decrease. But aside from that, like I said, he had some smaller errors, but he was much better in the second half. Even the first half before this, he had a 4th and 1 where they went for it, didn't convert early in the game, but later on, third quarter, had our 4th best decision or 4th best fourth down go of the week. About halfway through the third quarter, 4th and goal on the 1, pretty much a no-brainer these days. Decides to go for it. They're down 9 at this point. Boston Scott's able to get the touchdown, but that's a 7.2% pre-snap increase. And then a little bit later in the fourth quarter, they're up 3 at this point. Up 1. Sorry, they had kicked a field goal to take a 1-point lead after that last touchdown. Had our second best go of the week, a 4th and 1 on the Washington 42, instead of attempting a 60-yard field goal or punting to kind of play the field position game with a 1-point lead. Decided to go for it, burn more clock, try and get another score, a touchdown to put it away, or a field goal to make it a 4-point game. There was a 9.5% increase, and that's exactly what they did. Converted, got a field goal. So in this one, I mentioned Sirianni had some smaller errors, but a lot of really good calls. These fourth downs were a cumulative. He had 4 of them for a cumulative increase of 23.3% in win probability. With the errors he had, about 11%, but still good for a 13.1% net increase in win probability on fourth down. So Sirianni really good. I don't know if you really have anything to add. You know, that one late in the game, I think, is one that's not really surprising to see from him the way he's been this season.
Yeah, I think, big credit to him. I think the Eagles organization, we know, has been forward thinking on this matter for, quite some time. And I think was really, first in a lot of ways in the NFL. It's good to see that this continues on with Sirianni at the helm. I think, looking back at that first situation you mentioned where, he unfortunately punted on a 4th and 4. We really don't like that one, just to highlight, because it's just on the other side of the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. We've talked about the kind of the 2-for-1 idea borrowed from basketball, and that's definitely an aspect at play in our analysis of that one. So a little bit kind of more subtle and harder for others to pick up, but that's why we don't like that one. But then, I think the other ones that really presented themselves to him the rest of the game, he really capitalized on them and made the right calls. It was good to see.
Yeah, and then in the final seconds of the game, I mentioned they had taken a lead. They kicked a field goal to go up 20-16. We didn't really like that field goal. It was a smaller error, though, I think in the 2% range. But Washington made a push downfield to get a touchdown. They had 1st and 10 at the Philly 20, 30 seconds left. I believe Washington had no timeout. So coming out, they basically, had to throw to the end zone or throw to the sidelines. And it ended up getting intercepted on that first down play. Taylor Heinicke did. Ends up being our second most impactful play of the week. It was a 44.9% decrease in win probability. So that would kill the playoff hopes for Washington. And as I mentioned, would help Philly get into the playoffs on Minnesota's loss on Sunday Night Football. Another big one, this one was not really what we expected. The Rams and Ravens, with that depleted Ravens defense, Tyler Huntley starting at quarterback. Not necessarily, of course, it's a downgrade from Lamar Jackson, I think it would be safe to say, but not huge the way Huntley has played, filling in for Lamar. Still kind of able to run that same style of offense. He's very mobile, can throw the ball when needed. So this one, the Ravens had a lead pretty much the whole game. The Rams just really struggled in, that early East Coast game. Maybe had something to do with it. Who knows? But Sean McVay had a rough day with his play calling. He ranks 13th in our coach rankings, but only 23rd in CCI. And he had multiple errors in this one. One of them showed up in our top 5. One of them is just outside at number 6. So that first one was a 4th and 2 at their own 47, down 10-0, right at the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. Chose to punt. Cost Los Angeles 5.5% in pre-snap win probability. Again, that was number 3 in our worst errors of the week. So questionable one there. And so, some deeper numbers on this. The required conversion rate on this one, looking at it this morning, only 31.4%. A 4th and 2 would be expected to convert nearly 60% of the time, probably, especially with that Rams offense against that depleted Ravens defense. So really bad decision there. Then later on, down 9, they're facing 4th and 1 from their own 34. And we saw this against Green Bay. They went for it early on, down 7 at their own 34, didn't get it. But here, that conversion expected to convert nearly 70% of the time. Required conversion rate only about 49%. So again, not as strong as that first one, but still a 20% difference. Very strong, strongly in favor of the go. So this is something we've kind of become accustomed to seeing from Sean McVay.
Yeah, I think we've been on this beat. I think probably earlier than most, and I think he was billed early on as being very forward thinking and analytically minded. But yeah, we see too many of these decisions crop up from time to time to really feel good in the way that others do about Sean McVay's decision making. He's definitely accomplished a lot, not taking anything away from him, in the other areas of of his coaching expertise. But yeah, just not good. I mean, there's such a margin for error for these decisions, especially when you have such an advantage on offense as the Rams, typically do and have had since he's been head coach there. And now that they have Matthew Stafford, it's just so many of these are just a lock. You highlighted 2 of them. That one at the 2-minute warning. Yeah, 4th and 2, punting on 4th and 2, and oh man, that's just not good stuff, especially, that I think makes it blatantly clear. And then obviously you have the 2-for-1 going on there where you're not going to, very unlikely to get the ball back. And so, yeah, it's I'm just shaking my head over here. It's just, yeah, you hate to see it. You hate to see it. And especially when you have talent like that on the Rams offensive unit, just let them play, let them play, go out there and do it. So yeah, sorry, Sean McVay, but please get out of the way.
Yeah, and it came down to a 4th down. Basically, they had to go for it late in the game, and they converted a 4th and 5 on the Baltimore 12. So good things happened there. The Rams did end up winning. That 4th down conversion was our 4th most impactful play at 31.4%. Got them down to the 7-yard line, set up the game-winning touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. caught the 4th down pass and the game-winning touchdown. But one of those where they ended up winning, but it might not have come down to this very late game kind of heroics if they go for those and are able to convert like you would expect them to do as a very good offense and maybe continue those drives and get some points earlier on in the game. That does it for kind of the storylines and the headlines from the weekend. Obviously, there are a ton more. I mentioned the Antonio Brown situation, which we're not able to put any numbers to, but will be talked about for a long time to come, and maybe his last appearance in the NFL. That would not surprise me. But now we'll move on to our top 5 plays. We'll start with our most impactful. These are the biggest win probability swings of the week. So starting at number 5 and number 4, we covered. Number 5 was the 3rd and 27 conversion from Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, was a 24.1% win probability increase. And then number 4, I just talked about, I guess less than a minute ago, the 4th and 5 conversion from Stafford to OBJ that set up their game-winning touchdown, was a 31.4% increase. Number 3 is an interesting one. Raiders-Colts tied at 20 late in the 4th quarter, 54 seconds left. Raiders face 3rd and 10 at the Indy 48, looking to get into field goal range for a game-winning field goal. Derek Carr completes a pass to Hunter Renfrow, who got up and ended up running in for a touchdown. It was reviewed. Turns out he was just barely touched before he went down after he caught it, but still was a gain of 24 yards to the Indy 30. Basically allowed them to run the ball, force Indy to use all their timeouts and run down the clock. This was a 35.6% increase in win probability. This was a big play. It was really interesting. I thought it was going to be, the touchdown, where it was interesting later because Hunter Renfrow said he's glad he didn't score, or that it got called back, because it gave them enough time to run down the clock. But at the same time, during the play, I was thinking, wonder if he's going to go down. He still scored the touchdown. I was in that moment. It's kind of hard with a minute left. Indianapolis still having 3 timeouts, in the middle of the play. You don't think about it. But that one ended up getting called back, but was still a huge play.
Yeah. I mean, I think the absolute best thing to do, right? If he wasn't touchdowns, go all the way down to the 1-yard line, just fall down, right? Give himself up. I think he realized that in retrospect. Completely understandable how the any player would not know this, in the heat of the moment. And so it wound up working out for the Raiders, I think. And yeah, this is just such a big play because it basically just it swings the game so heavily in their favor to move, on a third and 10 where they don't get it. It's basically their last crack at it because it's a tie game. They're going to have to punt. To not only pick up the conversion, but then to basically move right into field goal range. You can bleed the clock all the way down, kick your field goal at a high, you're going to convert at a high clip. It's just, it's going to be a big play. So, I think it's refreshing to see something here in this top five that's not necessarily like a pick six or, a big turnover or something like that. And just, good execution. Good. I mean, and that was all she wrote in this Raiders game because they were able to convert that field goal and win it.
Yeah, interestingly enough, on this one too, the Raiders were just under 56% chance to win prior to that play, which was a little surprising to me in a tie game. A 3rd and 10, the Indy 48. If you don't get the first down, at best you're looking, you get 9 yards. You're looking at a 56, 57-yard field goal. It's a long field goal. Carlson's been really good, and that is if they don't go for it at a 4th and 1. But still, a 3rd and 10, you're not really expected to convert that a ton of time. But the Raiders were still favorites, 56, and that took them up to 91.4. Number 2 we covered was the Eagles' interception of Taylor Heinicke to end the game with clinging to a 4-point lead with Washington having the ball at the Philadelphia 20. That was a 44.9% decrease for Washington. And number 1, going back to that Tampa Bay, this is something we can put numbers to, and we'll see the Bucs and Jets come up again in our top fives. But 21 seconds left. Tom Brady and the Bucs always just finding a way to get it done. Brady is down 4, 1st and 10 from the 33, only 30% chance to win at this point. Hit Cyril Grayson right up in the front right corner in front of the pylon, is able to kind of fall forward out of a tackle and get the touchdown. Ended up being the game-winning touchdown, taking them up to 92.7%, which is a 62.7% increase in win probability. Just, again, Tom Brady finding a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say, right? Just amazing. 20 seconds left to be able to connect on like a 33-yard touchdown pass. It's like the defense knows what they need to do. They know what Tom Brady and the Bucs, have to do. It's improbable, and yet he's able to pull it off yet again. Amazing execution here by Tampa Bay, and I mean, it's in spite of some adversity, we'll say, and leave it at that.
No Antonio Brown, a banged up Mike Evans. Gronk had a big game, but then Ronald Jones, running back, gets hurt. So
no Fournette, no Godwin. No Fournette, no Godwin.
I mean, guys like Cyril Grayson, Tyler Johnson, and said a banged up Mike Evans. So really impressive for Brady, just adding to his legacy, I think. Honestly, never should have been that close against that Jets team, but nonetheless, he's able to come through and get the win. So that will do it for our top 5 most impactful plays. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to all of the Edge Sports shows, again, on any podcast platform, as well as our Edge Sports YouTube channel. So now that we've got the impactful out of the way, we'll move on to our best decisions. Scott, we'll talk about the plays that had the biggest pre-snap impact on win probability, positive impact, that is, and win probability for the offensive team. Number 5 and number 4 we covered in our intro. It was Zach Taylor's 4th and 1 at his own 45, was a 5.7% increase, was successful in getting that first down. Number 4 was the 4th and goal at the 1 for the Eagles. That was also successful, was a 7.2% increase in win probability versus a field goal attempt. Number 3, going back to the Colts and Raiders game. So this was a game that Katie and I, in our coach ranking show last week, highlighted as one of our head-to-head coaching matchups we're most looking forward to, because Frank Reich was our new number 1 coach. Rich Bisaccia had really struggled. He had our number 1 call last week, and we covered that one, but really struggled on 4th down since taking over as head coach. This was Frank Reich earlier in the game, about almost 3 minutes into the second half, trailing by 3, had a 4th and 1 at the Vegas 47. Kind of not really any question here. He went for it, I think 3 times it was, against the Patriots a few weeks ago on 4th and 1s. This one is a no-brainer when you've got Carson Wentz. You mentioned Philly and their analytics. This is something we saw Carson Wentz do a lot in that Super Bowl season, throughout the regular season, but until he got hurt. But Wentz converting, a quarterback sneak there, that was an 8.1% increase in pre-snap win probability from Frank Reich, who, again, number 1 in our coach rankings. Not really, I don't think, any surprise to me, Scott, to see him go for it there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ditto. 4th and 1 midfield. Let's go, baby, and keep the offense out there. That's what he did. No stranger to it, and I think we expect him to pull the trigger on these close ones, just about every time that he gets the opportunity to. So, yeah, don't really have a ton more to add there, and just good to see another coach, another organization that gets behind making these aggressive calls, and yeah, it's really the right thing. It didn't work out, unfortunately, for the Colts yesterday, but I think they've had they have their minds in the right spot, and I think it will work out for them in the long run.
Yeah, if Reich didn't have any really high leverage 4th-down situations, I would expect him, like I said last week, to make the right call in those situations. So we'll see for them moving forward. It's a big game for the Raiders, though, staying in the playoff race. I think they're now not necessarily locked into a playoff spot, but they're in position for a playoff spot, I believe, coming down. That game against the Chargers next week, going to be a big one on Sunday night, the last game of the regular season. Number 2 is the one we covered as well. Again, Nick Sirianni, 4th-and-1 at the Washington 42, looking to extend that drive late in the game and put up more points to force Washington to need more than a field goal. And that was a 9.5% increase in pre-snap win probability versus a long field goal attempt there. And number 1, there are questions on this one, not necessarily about going for it, but about the way that they chose to go for it. It was the Jets and Bucks, 24-20, New York leading. Only 2:17 left in the game. Face 4th-and-2 at the Tampa Bay 7. They go for it, which is great. 11.4% increase in win probability versus kicking the field goal there. Because you kick the field goal, 7-point game. We know what Tom Brady can do. We saw what he did. There's still a chance that he can go down there and tie the game, win it in regulation. So a field goal doesn't win you the game. So going for it was the correct call. But choosing a QB sneak on 4th-and-2 against a Bucks team that is very good up front, especially on the interior. And now I was looking up some stats earlier, and I think it was from a couple of years ago, but QB sneaks, are underutilized, but they convert, on 4th-and-1s about 84% of the time. But that's a 4th-and-1, or a lot of times 4th-and-inches. So on a 4th-and-2, going for it is pretty questionable there from Robert Saleh, despite the fact he made the right call.
Yeah, it's a weird decision. Yeah, I think quarterback sneaks, pretty good, pretty effective. I think there's good data behind that. But 4th-and-2, I don't know. I mean, maybe they saw something. Maybe they thought they had something that they could exploit to do this. I'll leave that to Saleh and the Jets to know. Maybe we'll never fully understand what their thought process was. But sort of setting that aside for a moment, I have to say I'm quite surprised to see that Robert Saleh found the go here, but very impressed. I think this is not an easy decision to make, and I think just even 2-3 years ago, you would see people losing their minds over this sort of thing. Taking points off the board here where you can go up a full touchdown. What are you doing? But it's just the right thing to do. And you go for it here. 4th-and-2 is not a super long ways to go. Obviously, your conversion rate should be pretty high if you're able to find a reasonable play call. Ignoring that for a second, but you find a reasonable play call, you pick up the first down, the game's over, and you don't ever give Tom Brady and that Bucs offense a chance. That's just so valuable to be able to cash in on that. And yeah, certainly you're going to go for it sometimes, and it's not going to work out, as was the case here. But overall, like bigger picture, there's just a lot of equity picked up here by making these sorts of decisions, by picking up these edges. And, the Jets have obviously had a long, rough go of it this season. Who knows? I guess if you were really cynical, you could say, were they even necessarily playing to win or just play not to go to overtime or something like that? Because at this point, they don't have any playoff hopes. But I think, yeah, but we'll cast that aside. I think, we'll give credit here. Robert Saleh really, really finds, the right decision. And, winds up being our number one best call of the week. And I think, not only I think was the, were the numbers behind this, but I also think it's an interesting one just because, in my own opinion, this is just my speculation. Just a couple of years ago, I think you would see a lot stronger negative reaction to this decision. And I think you'd also see most coaches make the opposite one. So is really, I think, an interesting marker for how far we've come. And it's just all over the place now. You can't miss it when you tune into a game on Sunday. These coaches are getting better and better all the time.
Yeah, especially earlier in the season, if this situation would have come up, to be honest, with a team like, a first year coach like Robert Saleh, I wouldn't be surprised if he did kick the field goal, in a more highly leveraged situation where maybe, if they start, I don't know what their record was. I think they didn't win a game for a few weeks, but, say that it is week 2 and they're only 0-2 and they've got a chance to beat the Bucs or, tie it or make it a 7-point game. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But to your point too, maybe they would have, the way the NFL is going now, which is awesome to see. And also having really not a lot to play for. And if you don't get it, you get it. Bucs have no timeouts. You win the game. If you don't get it, you're still winning. You have a chance to win. But if you lose, it doesn't hurt your draft stock. So maybe it was one of those it's a win-win situation. Make the fans happy with a win to get us to 3 wins, 4 wins, whatever it is, or keep that draft stock where it is. So either way, right call, maybe the wrong play call. Coming down to the specifics, but great job by Robert Saleh. And that's 2 weeks in a row. Last week, Ron Middleton filling in, had some big calls, had an error late. That was, I think, our worst of the year in a similar situation, not exactly the same, but a late game field goal scenario. So I'm with you. Big props to Robert Saleh there. So now we're going to move on to our top 5 worst 4th down calls of the week. We've already covered 3 of these 5, I believe. So we'll get into those. Before we do, just want to remind you about our site, EdjSports.com. That's EDJ Sports. And then our app. It's available for both iOS and Android. You can get pregame betting insights for every game, be able to see our fair value spreads, fair value totals, where we project that the lines should be and the totals should be, which Scott will talk about coming up in our Monday Night Football preview here in just a few minutes. And then you can get NFL news as well. So all that information available on the Edge Sports site and app. So now on to those worst decisions. Number 5, number 4 we covered. Number 5 is the Eagles, 4th and 4 at the Washington 45, coming down at the end of the half. Just a plus territory. Field position really isn't worth as much early in the game. Still a lot of time left to play. You're down 6. You've got an opportunity to pick up a first down and maybe get a field goal or a touchdown before the half. That's a 4.0% error, right at 4%. Number 4, I mentioned, so that was the Rams, the Sean McVay 4th and 2 at the 47 is number 4, not number 3, guide said, but that's a 5.5% error, choosing to punt there around midfield on 4th and short. Number 3, 49ers, Texans. 49ers up 3, 4th and 1, very similar, 4th and 1 at their own 47, just like the Rams were. A minute 40 left in the third quarter, so you're leading a team that is even worse than the Ravens. You're up 3, 4th and 1. You've got a quarterback that can run the ball. You've got a couple running backs. Elijah Mitchell was back in this one, had Jeff Wilson, a handful of guys who can run the ball. Deebo Samuel's in there, can put him in the backfield. And choosing to punt here is just a 6% error. I don't know what else to say other than this was bad, and a lot of people called him out for this.
Yeah, just horrible. I guess maybe he's thinking that, I'm playing the Texans, so I can just assume that they're never going to score points or something. The Niners do have a good defense.
The Texans just beat the Chargers last week, though, so I'm surprised that he had that kind of mindset coming into this one when they just handily beat the Chargers.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Texans have put up over 28 points the last couple of weeks. So I'm with you. I'm with you, Ian. I'm just sort of trying to steel man maybe what he's got going on in his mind here. I obviously think this is just an absolute brain dead decision. Keep the offense out there. 4th and 1, midfield. How are we still fighting these battles in 2022? But yeah, Kyle Shanahan, I think, he's accomplished once again, sort of like McVay. There's maybe some superficial similarities, but young head coach. I think early on in his career, definitely had some success, made a Super Bowl. Was billed as very sort of progressive minded in these sorts of areas, but how can you really say that? And then this one's just such a clear go. It really makes you scratch your head and wonder. So yeah, it's number 3 on our list this week for obvious reasons. There's not going to be too many times. It's going to be very, I think, exceptional circumstances, as we talked about at the top of the show, where we're saying you should do anything other than go for it on 4th and 1, but this is clearly not it. Late in the third quarter, in a pretty close game on a 4th and 1 from midfield. So yeah, just not a good one from Kyle Shanahan here.
And Houston's had a decent defense. They were, top half of the league. They were top 10 there up until a few weeks ago, I think, surprisingly. They're, 15th against the pass, only 26th against the run. So again, with all those weapons you've got, run the ball, run an option with Trey Lance or a triple option or something, going to the college ranks and be able to pick that, or just a quarterback sneak like we talked about a minute ago, or underutilized but very highly successful. So not surprising to see from Shanahan. Wouldn't be surprised to see him do a little bit more of that moving forward. One thing that doesn't show up in our top fives that the Texans had, they had a 4th and 8 from the San Francisco, in San Francisco territory. Don't remember exactly where it was, but they were down 10 points at that point, I think, and choosing to punt. I'm sorry. It was from the San Francisco 41-yard line. There was 7 minutes left, down by 10. Dropped them from like 4% to 2%. They're below 5% either way. That cuts you in half. You're down 10, 7 minutes left against a good team. San Francisco moved the ball down the field easily and then kicked a field goal to go up 13 at that point. So just more really bad decision making from David Culley, which we've seen throughout the year. So again, that's something that doesn't show up, but a 50% relative decrease most weeks is one of the biggest of a week at any given week when it comes to errors there, because typically when you're that low, coaches make the right decision because they've got no choice. But they're just questionable decision, but does not come into the top 5 because it was so low in win probability already. Number 2, going back to the Bucs Jets, this is Bruce Arians. This one was really, really interesting. Not really from Bruce Arians, but just the situation. Maybe Tom Brady can talk him out of some of these sometimes, but they were down 7, 12 minutes left in the game, a lot of time left, but they're already down 7 to the Jets. Haven't really been able to get a ton going. AB was gone at this point, but 4th and 6 at the Jets 39 and chooses to punt, not even to kick a field goal. That's a 57-yarder. Suckup is capable. That might be kind of at the back of his range. I think he struggled, if I remember correctly, on some longer kicks. But even then, if you're not going to kick a field goal and you're down 7, it doesn't help you a ton at that point. You've got to go. Like punting from an opponent's 39 pretty much never makes sense unless somehow you have 4th and goal at the 39 or something crazy where you've had some penalties and some sacks. This one ends up being an 8.2% error, and just really shocking to see that even from Arians. I mentioned not really too surprising, but at the same time it is.
Yeah, I would say usual suspect Bruce Arians here, deciding to punt. And just, you're so far into opponent territory, it's hard to you're certainly getting close to that point where this is just absolute shocking to be punting instead of, like you mentioned, either kicking a field goal, even though it's a long one, or going for it. 4th and 6 is not so far away to pick up a first down. I mean, clearly, maybe if you were a team that had this, scenario presented to them and you didn't have Tom Brady in that, that passing game to work with, maybe this is a little bit more defensible. Certainly you're not going to convert it at high of a rate, but yeah, it's just, man, it's just bad. 8.2% error here is really big for something with this much time left in the game. But yeah, it's just, it really is that bad. And, I think Arians, he's not going to change his mind. He's not going to change his mind. It seems it would take something, I think, really, some really sort of 180 turn to really get him to change his mind on going for it, being more aggressive. It's really a shame because, they have the talent on that side of the ball to really do special things. We saw it, literally happen at the end of this game, but what if it didn't even have to come to that, right? And when you're, the time's drawing down, you're already down a touchdown, go for, I think it's a very reasonable thing here, go for it on these clear decisions, so you don't have to go for it later on and under worse circumstances, right? Maybe you're forced to go for it later on a 4th and really long or something like that. So yeah, we really don't like this one. We think it's clear, and unfortunately for Tampa Bay fans, it doesn't seem like Bruce Arians is changing his mind anytime soon.
Yeah, you mentioned teams, with a worse pass offense. We saw it last week with the 49ers had one of our number 3 error or something that was top 5. It was a 4th and 9 at the Tennessee, 41, and chose down 7. That one, a little less time, probably 7 or 8 minutes left, but chose to punt. And, you're that close, the punt just doesn't help as much in terms of field position. If you are able to pin the Jets, the Bucs do have really good defense, maybe force a turnover from a rookie quarterback or something. But with that offense, it's better to trust Tom Brady, keep it in his hands. Like you said, I completely agree on that one. Now we're going to move into our Monday Night Football preview. Just one last reminder, those top 5s that we just covered, you can see all of those numbers on our website at EdjSports.com in our top 5 section. So moving on to Monday Night Football, could be sounds like it's going to be Big Ben's last game at Heinz Field. So the fans are going to be ready for that. Imagine the Steelers will probably come out pretty fired up. The Browns, on the other hand, have been eliminated from the playoffs, but can spoil it for the Steelers. The Steelers are still in contention for the playoffs. On the bubble, it's a big rivalry game. Would not be surprised to see a handful of unsportsmanlike penalties called in this one. It seems like every time we remember the Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett game from a few years ago. Don't expect any helmet slinging at some helmetless people, but would not be surprised to see it get a little chippy out there. So coming into this one, coach rankings, the Stefanski-Prefer combination. Mike Prefer did coach the one game against the Raiders, did have a big error in that one. But aside from that, it's been mostly Stefanski. They're 20th overall. Mike Tomlin, 32nd. And that's partly because the Steelers haven't really been that good this year on the field, but also he's dead last in our CCI metric on 4th down decision making. So we caught a lot of flack from that a couple weeks ago between Christmas and last weekend, or right before Christmas. And then we saw what happened to the Steelers against the Chiefs. Just nothing really went well there. So tonight, the Steelers are 2-point underdogs, 2-point favorites in the market. We have this one as Browns -1. So we're on the opposite side. We disagree with the market here. It looks like Pittsburgh is actually -2.5 now after opening at -1.5. So we've got a little bit. It's still pretty close, but we've got the Browns favored a little bit. So Scott, you want to talk about? I mentioned we've got the Browns favored. How close is it on there though? And what about that total?
Yeah, I think as you highlighted, not a huge chasm of difference here between what the market says as Steelers -2, -2.5 versus what we're saying here as Browns -1. I mean, certainly that seems like a field goal difference or whatever, but at that sort of point of the distribution, it's really close until we move over that 3-point threshold either way. So yeah, we do like the Browns here a little bit instead of the Steelers like the market does. I think if you're looking for a play there, you could put it down on the Browns, but definitely don't want to over exaggerate just how close this one is, and we're not too far apart from the market on this one. But shifting over and taking a look at the total, there is quite a bit of difference between what our model thinks and what the market has. So market right now, I think pricing this one as you would expect, a classic black and blue AFC North matchup in January as a 41.5 point total. But we think that's just a bit too low by actually quite a bit. So the Edge model has the fair value as 49. So we actually like playing the over in this one by quite a bit. Definitely think it's a strong play. I think maybe the market is underrating, what these two offenses are capable of. Certainly, there's some good defensive play, especially on the side of the Steelers. And there's some playmakers as well on the Brown side of the football. But we think that there's really a lot of potential here for points, and that this one can really unfold to be a lot higher scoring than the market thinks. If you're looking for a play in this one, I think the strongest play looking at the lines is to bet the over. Shifting over and taking a look at how the public sees this one, it looks like most of the bets are being placed behind Pittsburgh at a rate of about 64% versus Cleveland's 36%. And the amount of money backing the two teams is split in favor for Pittsburgh as well. The split is 75-25 in Pittsburgh's favor. So both of these metrics are sort of lined up on Pittsburgh. There's not really any clean takeaway from this. It's also not too drastic of an imbalance between the two teams. But yeah, it appears that the money is coming out strong for Pittsburgh, which is an interesting, interesting disagreement here between, that metric and what our model thinks. Will be interesting to see if that line moves any further, and maybe you can even get to play Cleveland if say that line moves by half a point more or a point more over that 3-point threshold. Then I think Cleveland starts to become interesting at that point. So check it out. Who knows what the line can do between now and game time? It certainly has the potential to move. Keep an eye on it, and I think at that point it would be, from our perspective, interesting. It would become interesting to start thinking about playing Cleveland there. So yeah, I think the other storylines entering into this one are Big Ben, in his final game potentially, or at least he's hinted at being his final game at Heinz Field. So definitely you can tune in for that. You can tune in for like I mentioned, AFC North black and blue matchup between two of the older franchises, storied franchises in the league, and potential. I think you mentioned potential for a lot of flags. I remember watching a game several years back, actually, speaking of Antonio Brown, between Cincinnati and the Steelers. I think it was like an opening round playoff game where, thinking back to that one, there were just some vicious hits.
Yeah, the Vontaze Burfict hit on Antonio Brown. And watching TV this morning, the Good Morning Football have it on kind of in the background. They said, some people have brought that up saying, he really hasn't been the same since that hit as far as mentally. Like after that, things kind of went downhill for him, if that was maybe a factor. But yeah, that game there, and then there was kind of one of the biggest, most memorable hits, I think, in recent NFL history.
Yeah, and I think hopefully, there's, I'm sure, bad blood between, division foes, but hopefully, you hate to see anybody you get just laid out like that and hurt in any sort of serious way. So we don't want to see that, but hopefully it's a clean game, a competitive one, and hopefully we get to see some points, especially if you're if you're on the side of the over, of the total, betting the over, like we think is the right thing to do. So yeah, tune in, check it out, and hopefully we get an interesting Monday night finale of the regular season.
How much do you think, if at all, and I can't really put numbers to it, but you think that the public betting has to do with it being Big Ben's last hurrah at Heinz Field, and maybe having some of that motivational kind of aspect that people think, they're going to come out fired up and they're going to win it for Ben?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. I would say that maybe if we saw the number of bets on Pittsburgh be significantly higher than they are, right now it's at 64%. Then I think I would be more, that would be more suggestive of the point you raised, that, hey, like maybe there's a lot of people sort of betting the story, right? They want to, they know Ben Roethlisberger. They've watched him, for a good chunk of their lives. They want to support the guy. It's a good story, right? But I don't know. I personally don't put too much stock into that. I don't think the numbers break out that strongly in the favor of that sort of being at what's at play, but certainly it's possible. And I think more interestingly enough is that the money is really strongly backing Pittsburgh, and if that moves the lines at all, then I think that really that could be interesting heading into game time. So we'll just have to sit tight, wait and see before things kick off tonight.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes. And unfortunately, I guess depending on who you're a fan of, the Browns eliminated. If Cincinnati would have won or would have lost yesterday, the Browns would have been in contention to win the division next week if they win tonight. They got a Ravens loss. They could have beaten Pittsburgh and then could have beaten Cincinnati next week, taken the tiebreaker and won the division. But didn't work out that way, so Cleveland eliminated. Pittsburgh is still playing for the playoffs, so maybe not Big Ben's last game at I guess if they end up a wild card, they would have to have a lot of things shake out for them to host a playoff game. But most likely his last game at Heinz Field. So again, thank you all for joining us here on this first Monday of 2022, probably the worst Monday of the entire year, coming back from a couple of weeks of holidays. Just to remind you, we will still be here next Monday. I believe we'll still be here through the playoffs as well, recapping the playoff action with probably some shorter shows with less games to talk about. You can also find me on Thursdays for our EdjSports betting preview on the EdjSports Podcast Network or on our YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to any of those shows. Give us 5-star reviews. Help us to grow our audience as much as we can. Again, our new site, our site and our app, both available at EdjSports.com, or our EdjSports app available for iOS and Android. Be on the lookout for our updated coach rankings coming out on Wednesday. Again, those will continue through the playoffs, looking at the remaining coaches that are left each week. And then Football Outsiders, our partners, who we love so much, are currently running a special for their premium subscription called FO Plus for just 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. Be sure to check them out over at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. You have a lot of good betting insights as well, some fantasy insights too, a lot of really good analysis, statistics, and things that you can only get with Football Outsiders or FO Plus subscription. So again, that's footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. Scott, thanks again for joining me, all of you out there. Hope you've had a great start to the new year. Enjoy the last Monday Night Football game of the year. Thankfully for me, the Packers have already clinched the number 1 seed. So even if the Manning cast curse is still a thing and Green Bay loses next week, it will not affect us at all.
Nice. Thanks, Ian. Have a good week, and I'll see you next time.